Part 1. The Black Chair. In Chapter 1, The Greater Good, Yarvi, the young prince of Getland, is being mentored by Mother Gundring, the ministry's wise minister. On a stormy night, she teaches him about the delicate balance of power, emphasizing the importance of wisdom and empathy over brute strength, as Yarvi prepares for his ministerial test. Despite his physical limitations, having only one hand, she assures him that his intellect and character will make him a great minister even if he does not inherit the throne. Yarvi is hesitant about the responsibility of leadership, but Gundring encourages him, knowing he will succeed. Their conversation is interrupted when Yarvi's uncle Odom arrives, breathless and distraught, revealing the devastating news. Yarvi's father and brother are dead, making him the new king. This moment forces Yarvi into a role he never expected, and his life takes an unexpected turn. In Chapter 2, Duty, Yarvi faces the aftermath of his father's and brother's deaths. As the new king of Getland, he must navigate the complexities of leadership despite his own doubts and physical limitations. His mother, Laithlin, demands vengeance against the Vanstermen, who are responsible for the deaths, and insists that Yarvi lead a raid. Though Yarvi lacks the courage and desire for violence, his mother pressures him into accepting his royal duty. She also arranges his marriage to his cousin Isrian to strengthen their political position, a decision Yarvi is reluctant to accept. Despite his grief and reluctance, Yarvi is reminded by his uncle Odom of his responsibility. The chapter highlights Yarvi's internal conflict as he grapples with his new role as king, torn between duty and personal feelings, and the weight of expectations from his family and people. In Chapter 3, A Way to Win, Yarvi is forced to spar in front of the warriors of Getland to prove his worth as king. Despite his physical limitations and lack of training, he is determined to find a way to win. His opponent, Keimdall, is larger, stronger, and skilled, and Yarvi quickly finds himself overmatched. After a humiliating defeat, Yarvi challenges Keimdall again, but his uncle Odom steps in and defeats Keimdall with ease, showing Yarvi a more efficient way to assert his authority. Although Yarvi's victory is unglamorous, it serves as a demonstration of his resolve. His uncle reminds him that a king must always win, regardless of the manner of the victory. Yarvi reflects on the pressures of kingship, realizing that the perception of strength is often more important than the actual battle itself. The chapter underscores Yarvi's inner struggle to navigate his duties while proving his worth. In Chapter 4, Between Gods and Men, Yarvi faces an arranged marriage to Isrian, his cousin, as part of his duty as king. During the ceremony, he struggles with his insecurities, particularly his crippled hand, and feels unworthy of the title. Despite his doubts, the marriage is formalized, and Yarvi is expected to assume the role of king, with little regard for his feelings. Isrian, however, shows understanding and hints at a shared future of duty and compromise. After the ceremony, Yarvi is left alone in the Gods' Hall with the Black Chair, the seat of kings, and contemplates his unworthiness. He touches the chair but feels even more out of place. Escaping into the hidden passageways of the Citadel, Yarvi finds solace in the dark, away from the expectations placed on him. The chapter highlights his internal conflict and the burden of his new responsibilities. In Chapter 5, Doves, Yarvi struggles with the weight of his new role as king. While feeding the doves in the Citadel's high tower, he reflects on his unfulfilled duties and the constant reminders of his inadequacies. Mother Gundring arrives, informing him that Grandmother Wexen, the first of ministers, has sent a message asking when Yarvi will take the minister's test. Yarvi recalls his past fear of Wexen and the High King, sensing their ulterior motives for his involvement in the ministry. Mother Gundring reassures him that they must make the best of the situation. Yarvi learns that his father's parley with Grumgilgorm, the Vansterman leader, was a trap, leading to his father's death. Despite his fear, Yarvi is urged to go down and take on his responsibilities. As they prepare to leave, Mother Gundring expresses her sorrow, but affirms the importance of fulfilling the greater good. In Chapter 6, Promises, Yarvi's first official act as king is overseeing the funeral rites for his father and brother. The ceremony is a grand affair, but Yarvi feels unworthy, constantly reminded of his limitations. Despite the presence of powerful families and high-ranking figures, Yarvi's ascension to the throne is met with discomfort and resentment. His mother forces him into a leadership role, and Yarvi struggles with his fears and insecurities. As the funeral ship burns, Yarvi swears an oath of vengeance for the death of his family, earning the approval of the warriors. His uncle Odem offers support, but Yarvi is acutely aware of the weight of his position. He attempts to project confidence, but internally he grapples with self-doubt. He makes a promise to his mother to be a king worthy of the title as he heads into the conflict awaiting him, ready to embrace his new role despite the uncertainty. In Chapter 7, Man's work, Yarvi, now king, accompanies his uncle Odin on a raid to take vengeance for his father's and brother's deaths. As the men approach the town of Amwen, they encounter devastation, burning houses and captured slaves. Yarvi struggles with his feelings of inadequacy, having never fought or led a raid before. When he sees the brutality of the attack, he questions his uncle's methods, especially targeting women, children, and the elderly in the name of vengeance. The tension heightens when Odin reveals that the headman of Amwen, who orchestrated Yarvi's death, is captured. In a shocking twist, Odin kills the headman, then coldly declares that Yarvi's death was orchestrated by him as well, implying that Yarvi was never meant to survive. Odin orders Yarvi's execution, but Heimdall intervenes, only to be killed by Hurik, leaving Yarvi horrified and on the brink of death. He is ultimately thrown from the tower into the sea. In Chapter 8, The Enemy, Yarvi survives a near-death experience when he is thrown into the sea by his uncle Odin's betrayal. Clinging to life, he escapes the water and is captured by Vanstermen, including their king, Gorm. Gorm mocks Yarvi's situation, claiming that no one can kill him and offering Yarvi a blade, but Yarvi's weakened state prevents him from acting. Gorm's minister, Mother Scare, questions the justice of the killings, while Gorm dismisses it, preferring to sell rather than kill. Yarvi is then collared and treated brutally by the Vanstermen, enduring excruciating pain when a hot iron is used to seal the collar around his neck. He is cast aside as a slave, no longer a prince, and left with no hope for escape. The chapter ends with Yarvi being branded and reeling from the agony of his new fate. Part 2. The South Wind. In Chapter 9, Cheapest Offerings, Yarvi endures the harsh conditions of a slave market in Volsgard Vansterland after being captured by his uncle's forces. Imprisoned in filth with other broken souls, he struggles to survive and suppress his desires for revenge. As the days pass, Yarvi grows numb to his circumstances. When two buyers arrive looking for rowers, Yarvi lies about his skills to escape the horrors of the market. After a grim inspection, he is sold, along with other damaged slaves, for a mere fraction of his worth. Yarvi is bought for less than the cost of a sheep. Despite the cruelty of his situation, he endures, resigned to his fate. His status as the rightful king of Getland is nothing more than a memory, and he is now just another pawn in a brutal world where survival is the only goal. In Chapter 10, one family, Yarvi, now a slave, is brought aboard the South Wind, a ship bound for Thorolby. The ship's captain, Ebdel Arakshadiksharam, introduces herself with bravado, showcasing her dominance and the chaotic environment of the ship. The slaves, including Yarvi, are forced into menial roles as rowers. Yarvi, whose crippled hand prevents him from rowing effectively, is chained to a bench alongside other downtrodden slaves. He observes the harsh conditions and the cruel treatment of fellow slaves, including an old beggar who is beaten. Yarvi's dignity is stripped away, and he is reminded of his loss of power. As the ship prepares to sail, Yarvi's thoughts are consumed by his broken past, with little hope of escape or change. Captain Shadikshiram's pompous speech about family contrasts sharply with the harsh realities of their situation, leaving Yarvi feeling even more powerless. In Chapter 11, Heave, Yarvi struggles as a slave aboard the South Wind, enduring brutal conditions as he is forced to row. Trigg, the overseer, uses his whip to push Yarvi and the other slaves to exhaustion, while the ship's captain, Ebdel Arakshadiksharam, displays her ruthless authority. Yarvi's crippled hand makes rowing even more painful, and he is chained to the oar with other slaves. Despite the cruelty, Yarvi forms an unlikely bond with his fellow rowers, Jod and Rolf, who help him endure the hardships. The rowers share their misery and labor, creating a sense of camaraderie. Yarvi reflects on his past, his fall from power, and his oath of vengeance against his uncle. As the ship reaches Thorolby, Yarvi is confronted with his home, now distant and out of reach. He realizes he must escape to fulfill his oath and reclaim his kingdom. In Chapter 12, The Minister's Tools, Yarvi endures relentless hardship aboard the South Wind. The ship drags south along the coast of Getland, passing familiar landscapes that once belonged to his kingdom. His struggle on the oar worsens under Trigg's cruel oversight, but he slowly grows stronger, enduring pain and the whip, with the help of his fellow slaves, Jod and Rolf. Yarvi observes the ship's officers, including the lazy captain Ebdel Arakshadikshram and the corrupt Ankren who exploits the crew. Meanwhile, Sumael, the navigator, is chained for her skills, and Yarvi's fellow rowers share their pasts and frustrations. Rolf, a former raider, tells Yarvi about his capture, while Yod, once a baker, explains how he ended up chained to an oar. Despite their grim conditions, Yarvi begins to bond with the men, realizing that survival aboard the South Wind is a shared struggle, and his escape and vengeance remain his driving goal. In Chapter 13, The Fool Strikes, Yarvi endures the relentless hardships aboard the South Wind as they approach Skeckenhouse. The ship navigates past the haunting ruins of Strokum, and Yarvi reflects on what his life could have been if he had taken the minister's test. Upon arrival, the city of Skeckenhouse feels underwhelming, with decaying docks and idle guards. Captain Shadikshiram is preoccupied with securing her trade license, while Trigg, the overseer, focuses on maintaining order. The crew is full of tension, with Yarvi observing the corrupt practices of Ankren and the mistreatment of the slaves. Despite his grim circumstances, Yarvi finds solace in singing, offering the crew a rare moment of entertainment which shifts their perception of him. As the chapter ends, Yarvi contemplates the power of patience, using his intelligence and cunning as his weapons rather than physical strength, preparing for his eventual strike. In Chapter 14, Savages, the South Wind battles a violent storm with Yarvi and the crew struggling to survive. The ship is nearly destroyed, and 3 oar slaves die in the chaos. Once the storm passes, the crew attempts repairs on the beached ship. Yarvi, now free from the oar, begins to form a plan using his ministerial skills. However, their troubles escalate when they are confronted by the Shens, a feared and savage people. Despite initial fears, Yarvi, using his knowledge of their language, convinces the Shens to grant them the guest right, avoiding a violent confrontation. Svidur, the leader of the Shens, reveals her frustration with the High King's greed and hints at the possibility of trade. Yarvi seizes the opportunity to negotiate with her, beginning the process of bargaining for their survival, showcasing his strategic thinking amidst dire circumstances. In Chapter 15, Ugly Little Secrets, Yarvi confronts Shadikshiram about her storekeeper and overseer, Ankren and Trigg, taking their own cuts of the profits. Yarvi reveals that Ankren had been secretly embezzling money, which was intended to secure his family's safety from the flesh dealer in Thorlby. Shadikshiram, unfazed by Ankren's betrayal, mercilessly punishes him, but ultimately shows some leniency after Yarvi intervenes, suggesting she could still sell him for profit instead of killing him. Shadikshiram decides to replace Ankren with Yarvi, making him the new storekeeper and reinforcing her trust in him. While she reveals her penchant for mercy, she also threatens Yarvi with the same fate if he betrays her. Yarvi, though uneasy, agrees to her terms, recognizing that his strategic positioning could be his key to survival and eventual revenge on his treacherous uncle. In Chapter 16, Enemies and Allies, Yarvi finds himself excelling at managing the stores aboard the South Wind, much to his relief compared to his previous role as an oarsman. He quickly proves adept at bargaining, using his mother's skills to negotiate supplies and earn the captain's favor. However, Trigg becomes suspicious of his cunning and demands half of any future gains Yarvi makes. As the ship sails, Yarvi reflects on his past and longs to return home, especially to Isrian. When the crew arrives at a rough trading post, Yarvi hatches a plan to slip some tanglefoot leaf into the guard's drink to aid in an escape. Meanwhile, he begins forming a secret alliance with Sumael, recognizing that their shared knowledge and skills might be the key to escaping the ship. Together, they discuss the possibility of freeing the slaves once they reach Thorlby, planning their move carefully as they grow closer. In Chapter 17, One Friend, the South Wind sails northward through icy waters as Yarvi struggles with the harsh conditions, growing more desperate for escape. While the crew navigates through the cold and dreary sea, Yarvi's thoughts frequently drift back to Thorlby, his family, and his oath of vengeance. At a trading post, Yarvi successfully uses his skills to negotiate supplies, though Trigg becomes suspicious of his cunning. As the ship continues on its journey, Yarvi secretly plans an escape with Sumael, who shares his interest in freedom. During a tense moment, Yarvi realizes that Trigg's threats are serious, and he is dragged across the ship in preparation for being thrown overboard. However, just as things look dire, Nothing, the silent scrubber, intervenes, allowing Yarvi to escape. Yarvi, now free from Trigg's grasp, flees through the ship, making his way to the forward hatch in a desperate bid for freedom. In Chapter 18, Death Waits. Yarvi fights to escape the chaos aboard the South Wind as it sinks. After an intense struggle with the guards, he makes his way into the hold, hiding as they search for him. Trapped in the ship's flooding interior, Yarvi works desperately to free himself but is cornered by Trigg, who is ready to kill him. However, Nothing, the seemingly broken deck scrubber, intervenes with a blood-soaked sword, killing several guards and confronting Trigg. In the ensuing chaos, Trigg begs for mercy, but Nothing delivers a fatal blow. The ship sinks further, and Yarvi struggles to breathe as he searches for Trigg's key. Despite his efforts to save the remaining slaves, Nothing forces Yarvi into the freezing sea, where Mother Sea claims him once more. Yarvi is pulled into the water, feeling both fear and a strange sense of liberation. Part 3. The Long Road. In Chapter 19, bending with circumstance, Yarvi and his companions flee from the sinking south wind. As the ship is swallowed by the sea, Yarvi and the others struggle through the cold, desperately trying to escape the chaos. They seek shelter near a fire built by Ankren, and despite their dire circumstances, they begin to discuss their next move. Yarvi, haunted by his need for vengeance and the desire to return to Getland, plans to head west. However, the group is divided on the best direction to take, with some favoring east and others west. Sumael, with her skills, argues for west, citing the potential for food and shelter in Vansterland. In a surprising turn, Nothing, who had been a mere deck scrubber, joins them, offering his sword and guidance. The group ultimately decides to head west, though tensions remain about their uncertain future. In Chapter 20, Freedom, Sumael leads the group through a harsh, snowy landscape, with the south wind sinking in the distance. They struggle against the cold, rationing meager supplies, and find shelter in a snow cave built by Yarvi. The group consists of Yarvi, Sumael, Rolf, Jod, Ankren, and Nothing, each battling the elements and their own fears. Ankren surprises the group by providing food, and the group bonds despite their dire circumstances. Yarvi reflects on his lost family and the challenges ahead. They discuss their next move, with Rolf and Sumael debating the best direction. Yarvi, despite the pain of his journey and personal struggles, resolves to continue heading west toward Getland. In the snow cave, Yarvi finds warmth in Sumael's hand, marking a rare moment of comfort. As they share their last food, the future remains uncertain, but they continue together, united in their struggle. In Chapter 21, The Better Men, the group of survivors, including Yarvi, Sumael, Rolf, Jod, Ankren, and Nothing, continue their struggle in the freezing wilderness after escaping the sinking south wind. They endure hunger, exhaustion, and the harsh elements, with arguments about their respective tribes and survival strategies. When they stumble upon a forest, they hope for food, fire, and warmth, but their efforts yield little. Sumael nearly dies from exposure after falling through the ice, but Nothing rescues her. Despite their growing despair, they try to build a fire, but it proves impossible in the wet conditions. Yarvi, desperate to save Sumael, finds wool from sheep, signaling the potential for survival. The group prepares to continue their journey south, with Jod carrying Sumael, demonstrating a selfless act of strength. Yarvi resolves to stay strong, feeling the weight of their shared struggles and their bond as oarmates. In Chapter 22, Kindness. Yarvi and his group stumble upon a small settlement and are initially wary of the inhabitants. Nothing suggests they use force to take what they need, but Yarvi insists on trying to talk first. They meet Shidwala, an older woman, who surprises them by offering help and shelter. Despite their dire circumstances, Shidwala and her family provide warmth and food. The group bonds over their shared hardships, and Yarvi is grateful for their hospitality. The group attempts to trade the few items they have, including their heavy chains, which hold significant value in this region. After an emotional exchange, Nothing's collar is removed after 20 years, and he experiences newfound freedom. As they prepare to leave, Shidwala advises them to head north and west, where a land of warmth awaits. The chapter concludes with Yarvi reflecting on the kindness shown to them, which they will never forget. In Chapter 23, The Truth. Yarvi's group, tired and hungry, discusses their future plans. Rolf proudly shows off his deer kill, and the group settles down to eat, with each member revealing bits of their past. Ankren shares his desire to rescue his family from a slave dealer, and Yarvi confesses that he is the rightful king of Getland, revealing his true identity. This shocks the group, with Nothing swearing an oath to help Yarvi reclaim his throne. As they continue their journey, they find a warm spot and rest, but soon notice smoke rising from the direction of Shidwala's steading. Sumael confirms it's a potential threat as they spot a group of 24, including sailors from the south wind, heading towards them. Realizing they are being pursued, Yarvi decides they must leave before dawn, and Nothing prepares for a fight as Yarvi resolves to keep moving. In Chapter 24, Running, Yarvi and his group continue their perilous journey through a desolate, steaming landscape, fearing both the harsh environment and their pursuers. They debate their situation, with Sumael leading the group to stay ahead of the Banyas and Shadikshiram. The terrain is brutal, with scorching heat replacing the earlier cold, and the group is reduced to half-naked, exhausted figures struggling to survive. They fear the pursuing Banyas, who are relentless and have dogs to track them. The group faces several obstacles, including falling and bruising themselves, but Ankren helps Yarvi get back on his feet each time. Yarvi expresses regret for his actions on the south wind, and Ankren reveals his own inner turmoil. As they approach a river, the threat of their pursuers remains looming, and they realize that survival depends on staying ahead of them, with death seeming inevitable if they fail. In Chapter 25, Downriver, the group reaches the Rangheld River, exhausted and desperate for a way to cross. Despite the dangerous and swift current, they work together to build a makeshift raft using timber and ropes. Sumael leads the effort, but Nothing remains focused on the impending threat from Shadikshiram. The raft, built hastily with limited resources, is a risky solution, but they have no choice. As they launch the raft, they hear Shadikshiram's men, including dogs, closing in. Amid the chaos, the group paddles furiously, trying to steer the raft, while being shot at by arrows from the bank. A near miss with an arrow confirms the gravity of their situation. As they float further into the river, they spot Shadikshiram watching from a distance, realizing she has been tracking them all along and will never stop hunting them. In Chapter 26, Only a Devil, the group takes shelter in an ancient elf ruin, using it as a potential stronghold against Shadikshiram's pursuing forces. As they prepare for the inevitable confrontation, they reflect on their limited options and dwindling resources. Nothing surprisingly takes charge, asserting that the narrow entrance to the ruin will limit Shadikshiram's forces, giving them a chance to fight. The group struggles with doubt and fear, especially Ankren, who is desperate to reunite with his family. Despite the grim odds, Nothing exudes a mad confidence, encouraging the group to fight with whatever weapons they have. Yarvi is reluctantly handed a knife and positioned with Ankren to guard the right flank. As they prepare, Nothing riles them with talk of their last stand, drawing a parallel between their fight and the heroism of old. In a moment of defiance, Yarvi accepts his role, standing alongside his comrades in this desperate battle. In Chapter 27, The Last Stand, the group faces Shadikshiram and her men in a brutal confrontation. As the enemies close in, the group prepares for a final stand in the ruins, with Nothing taking command, confident in their chance to win despite the overwhelming odds. Yarvi, Ankren, and the others struggle with their fears, but they stand together facing the fight ahead. In the chaos, Ankren is killed by Shadikshiram, and Yarvi, in a moment of desperation, finally finds the will to fight. He stabs Shadikshiram, ending her life after a tense struggle. The group defeats the Banyas, but the victory feels hollow for Yarvi as he mourns the loss of Ankren. The chapter ends with Yarvi reflecting on his role as the king of Getland, the weight of his position settling in amidst the chaos and bloodshed. In Chapter 28, Burning the Dead, the group burns the bodies of their enemies and comrades in a grim ritual, marking the end of their brutal journey. Yarvi struggles with guilt over Ankren's death and questions his actions, but finds some solace in the camaraderie with his companions. They reflect on their losses and the harsh world they inhabit. As they rest, a group of Vanstermen, led by a captain, approaches, demanding their weapons and challenging their story. The group tries to bluff their way out, with Sumael claiming to be Ebdel Arik Shadikshiram, but the Vanstermen remain skeptical. The captain reveals that Grom Gilgorm, Yarvi's uncle, has come north to hunt, making it clear that their enemies are closing in. The chapter ends with the group bound for their next challenge, unsure of their fate, but with the threat of their uncle's power looming over them. In Chapter 29, Floating Twigs, Yarvi and his companions are captured by Gromgilgorm's forces and herded into a camp of Vanstermen. While held captive, Yarvi contemplates his survival and begins to form a plan. He boldly declares himself the rightful king of Getland, using his heritage to catch the attention of Gorm, who initially doubts him. After some tense exchanges, Yarvi offers Gromgilgorm a deal. If Gorm helps him take back his throne, Yarvi will serve him as a vassal. This proposition stirs Gorm's interest, and the deal is struck. Yarvi promises Gorm a powerful position in Getland, claiming that with his help, Gorm could become second only to the High King. Despite objections from his companions, Yarvi recognizes that his only way to regain his throne and survive is through Gorm's support. The chapter ends with Yarvi accepting the price of power as he walks deeper into his plan. Part 4. The Rightful King. In Chapter 30, Floating Twigs. Yarvi and his companions are aboard a ship, heading toward Thorlby. While Yarvi feels the weight of his oath to reclaim the throne, his thoughts are clouded by the sight of the enslaved oarsmen and the memories of his own time in bondage. He engages in conversation with Sister Aud, an apprentice to Mother Scare, who reveals the use of crows instead of doves for messages, a shift in Scare's trust. Yarvi reflects on the deal he made with Gromgilgorm, acknowledging that while Gorm is now his ally, he is still deeply conflicted about the price of using him to regain his throne. Nothing warns him that this alliance with Vansterlen will cost him in the future, but Yarvi is resolute. As the ship nears Thorlby, the pressure of his oath intensifies, and he orders the overseer to push the slaves harder, determined to reach his goal despite the moral cost. In Chapter 31, Your Enemy's House, Yarvi and his group arrive in Thorlby, where Yarvi is both at home and a stranger. Sumael uses a fake identity to get past the dockmistress and head toward Queen Laithlin. Yarvi struggles with the weight of his past, feeling like an outsider in his own city. As they walk through Thorlby, Yarvi sees familiar places and faces but hides, fearing recognition that could lead to his death at Gromgilgorm's hands. They make their way to a house belonging to Gorm's minister, Mother Scare. Here, Yarvi instructs Sumael to meet his mother, but he is uncertain if she will believe him. Meanwhile, a priest announces the rise of the One God, signaling a shift in the city's faith. Yarvi reflects on how much has changed since his family's downfall, with the High King's influence now overtaking Thorlby. In Chapter 32, Great Stakes, Yarvi is reunited with his mother, the Queen of Getland, who holds an imposing presence. After a tense exchange, Yarvi reveals his true identity and recounts the trials he's faced, from the raid at Amwend to his slavery and escape. His mother listens in silence, growing increasingly proud of his resilience, though she is disturbed by his alliance with Gromgilgorm. Yarvi explains that Gorm's help was necessary to defeat his uncle Odin, who holds the Black Chair. Despite her reservations, Yarvi's mother acknowledges the need for allies and agrees to support his plan to reclaim the throne, but warns of the risks. They strategize a plan to lure Odin out of the citadel by using Gorm as bait. Yarvi's mother, impressed by his cunning, shows admiration for his leadership. As the stakes rise, Yarvi's resolve strengthens, ready for the dangerous path ahead. In Chapter 33, Yarvi, Rolf, and Nothing navigate dark hidden passages under the citadel. Yarvi reflects on his past as an outcast, learning to survive in the shadows. The group makes their way through the ancient tunnels where Yarvi's knowledge of secret paths proves invaluable. They discuss their plan to trap Yarvi's uncle Odin using the Screaming Gate. Yarvi, fueled by anger and determination, strategizes with Rolf and Nothing, planning to take action when the time is right. They observe Odin in the God's Hall, where he speaks to his sister and shows signs of his cruelty. Yarvi struggles with his emotions, torn between hatred and lingering love for his uncle, whom he once saw as a source of kindness. Despite his emotional turmoil, Yarvi steels himself for the confrontation ahead, knowing that he must reclaim his throne no matter the cost. In Chapter 34, Yarvi wakes from a troubling dream of battle only to face a grim reality. Gromgilgorm, with his vast army, is rapidly approaching, and Thorlby is in chaos. Yarvi gathers his companions, including Rolf, Nothing, Sumael, and Jod, to discuss their next steps. Despite their fears, they are committed to fighting. Yarvi expresses gratitude to Nothing for his loyalty and seeks the same from the others. Sumael and Jod are hesitant, but Yarvi's words inspire them to join him in the fight. The group faces a difficult decision. abandon the cause or stand together as they did during their past trials. Yarvi, determined, tells them that this fight is his, but they must face it together. Sumael and Jod ultimately decide to stand by him, though not without reservations. The group prepares for the battle ahead, knowing the stakes are high and the odds are daunting. In Chapter 35, Yarvi and his companions prepare for a pivotal moment as Grom Gilgorm's army nears. Inside the citadel, Yarvi reflects on his position and prays to Mother War for victory and revenge against his uncle Odin. He moves with his ragtag group of warriors, including nothing but rogues and criminals, towards the Screaming Gate, the trap set to bring down Odin. As they await the right moment, Yarvi's mother has a tense interaction with Odin, distracting him just long enough. With a surge of courage, Yarvi orders the pull of the pin that activates the Screaming Gate. The gate crashes down, sealing the citadel and trapping Odin's forces inside. As the plan unfolds, Yarvi feels a mix of triumph and fear, knowing the fate of the kingdom rests on this moment. The chapter ends with a chaotic escape as the battle for Thorlby begins in earnest. In Chapter 36, chaos erupts in the citadel's yard as Yarvi's plan unfolds. His mother's hirelings ambush Odin's veterans, but the survivors fight back fiercely. Rolf's archers provide cover from the roofs, and nothing wreaks havoc with his sword. Amid the violence, Yarvi hesitates, struggling with the brutality of the battle and the weight of his decisions. He witnesses Hurik, his mother's chosen shield, confront Jod and eventually kill him. When Hurik turns to Yarvi, ready to finish what was started in Amwin, Yarvi's mother intervenes, forcing Hurik to drop his sword and betray his oath. In the aftermath, Jod lies dead, and Yarvi faces the harsh reality of war. His mother urges him to continue his mission, killing Odin and reclaiming the throne. Yarvi steels himself for what comes next, ordering his men to follow him, determined to take back the Black Chair. In Chapter 37, a lonely seat, Yarvi and his group storm the God's Hall, where Odin, surrounded by his few remaining men, tries to defend his claim to the throne. As the battle brews, Nothing, revealed to be Uthal, Yarvi's long-lost uncle, steps forward, shocking Odin and the warriors with his transformation. Uthal confronts Odin, accusing him of betrayal and stealing the birthright, revealing the brutal years he spent as a slave. As the two brothers fight, Uthal displays unmatched skill and finally overpowers Odin. In his last moments, Odin attempts to draw a hidden dagger but is stabbed by Yarvi, who delivers the final blow. With Odin dead, Uthal is poised to claim the Black Chair, but Yarvi, having achieved his revenge, renounces the throne. He bows before Uthal, acknowledging him as the rightful king, and lets go of his desire for power, choosing instead peace and vengeance. In Chapter 38, The Blame, Grom Gilgorm arrives at the God's Hall, expecting to find a conquered Getland, only to discover Uthal, Yarvi's uncle, seated on the Black Chair. Uthal challenges Gorm to a duel, but Gorm refuses, preferring diplomacy over combat. Tensions rise as Uthal criticizes Yarvi's past decisions, particularly his pact with Grom Gilgorm, which led to many deaths. Yarvi admits his mistakes but pleads for mercy, offering to give up all claims to the throne in exchange for a position as minister. Uthal, after consulting with Mother Gundring, agrees to this offer, exiling Yarvi instead of executing him. Yarvi's mother supports Uthal's decision, and Yarvi is granted a place beside the throne, giving up his royal claim. Later, Yarvi reflects on the consequences of his actions, mourning the loss of Jod and his strained relationship with Sumael, who prepares to leave for home, carrying Jod's ashes. In Chapter 39, Summer Saved, Yarvi and Rolf visit a slave market where Yarvi confronts Yoverfell, a merchant who had wronged Ankren. After forcing him to release Ankren's wife and child, Yarvi ensures the merchant's business is moved to Volsgard. Despite Yarvi's apparent success in freeing the slaves, the family is not grateful, and Yarvi reflects on the weight of his actions. As the chapter progresses, Yarvi discusses his past with Rolf, who rejects Uthal's offer to join the King's Guard. Yarvi realizes he has no interest in ruling and chooses to take the minister's test instead. In a final moment, Yarvi meets Isrian on the roof, where she reveals her deep-seated hatred and the vow she swore to avenge her father's death. Yarvi, now distanced from his past and future, walks away, realizing that Isrian and he are forever bound by the consequences of their oaths. In Chapter 40, The Lesser Evil, Yarvi returns to Thorlby and meets with Mother Gundring, now ailing but still sharp. He passes the minister's test and reflects on his journey, discussing the complexities of oaths, power, and the lesser evil. He reveals to Mother Gundring that he now understands the true nature of the political games played by the High King and his grandmother, involving betrayal and murder for control over the throne. Yarvi shares the story of a minister who killed her king at the High King's bidding, using deceit to replace him with a more compliant brother. He explains that it was the lesser evil to protect the greater good, but the use of crows instead of doves led to the plan's failure. Yarvi now accepts the title of Father Yarvi, having sworn vengeance for his family's deaths. The chapter ends with a call for Yarvi to meet King Uthal.